Well, this pay-per-view is mostly dog shit, wasn't it? I'm John Ritten with the retro review of WCW Superbrawl 6. And it's a good thing WCW got out of the cartoonish phase here. Well, at least a couple months later, when they were able to convince Hall and Nash to come in and then convince Hogan to turn heel, form the NWO, and things took off in a more adult-oriented manner. Because my fucking god, the crowd in the Bayfront Center, 7,200 people in St. Petersburg, Florida, were ready to just rip down the cage walls by the end of the show and say, we're fucking sick of this, we're sick of Hogan's antics, give us something else. And then they gave them something infinitely worse at Uncensored 96, the three-tiered cage match, the Doomsday Cage, the Alliance to End Hulkamania match. Sweet fucking Christ. That was so fucking bad, and I gotta retro review that as well. So anyway, Schiavone, Heenan, and Dusty on commentary, they talk about the card. I love Dusty Rhodes. He was not a good commentator at all. He was good at Dustyisms, and he knew a lot about wrestling, but Schiavone and Heenan could have just fucking called this, and I think it would have been better. Dusty at times was entertaining, do not get me wrong, but he was not good at commentary. He just fucking wasn't. As much as he knew about wrestling, it did not translate that well. Anyway, Public Enemy versus the Nasty Boys in a street fight, falls count anywhere. It was a typical plunda, if you will, and these guys wrestled about 15 million times in 1996 alone on Nitro and on pay-per-view. Seriously, they seem to wrestle for fucking ever. Neither of these teams, their styles really spoke to me. I didn't really care for what they fucking did. I really didn't like the Nasty Boys. They had some good matches, but most of their matches, in my opinion, were pretty much fucking dog shit. Public Enemy were a niche act, in my opinion. They worked well in ECW, and they worked well with this type of garbage match wrestling. Even if they could work, by that point, the bloom was off the rose, in my opinion, of course. And they just did a whole bunch, they used a whole bunch of plunda, chairs, tables, trash cans, and stuff like that. And then they had a merch table set up near the stage where if you're trying to sell a lot of merch, you want to put it where the fans can access it. What are you going to do? Hand shirts out to people, collect the cash? It would be like in the front row, maybe the second row, and then maybe the front row of the bleachers above, so you would sell merch to like maybe 100 people. Not the best place if you're actually trying to turn a profit with your merch money. Anyway, Rocco Rock flies through a table off the balcony, and then Knobs hits him in the head with a piece of the table. 1, 2, 3. Mean Gene does all the interviews Conan about the U.S. title match he has later. Johnny B. Bad versus DDP with the Diamond Doll on the line, and also the WCW TV Championship, and $6 million. Because DDP lost his money and then stole it back from the Diamond Doll or something. It was really fucking stupid. That being said, these two always had really good matches, and the pace was good. We get DDT by DDP. I knew I was going to screw that one up. He showboats, he gets a 2 count. We get a lot of rest holds, but we get it turned up a little bit later. We get a tombstone variation, 1, 2, 3. Johnny B. Bad wins. The Diamond Doll gets the $6 million, and then Johnny B. Bad would leave soon after this and go to WWE. Where unfortunately, even though Johnny B. Bad was a pretty damn good performer, you know, Mark Merrow was a pretty damn good performer and could work as Wildman Mark Merrow as far as middle of the card. Yeah, Vince was more fixated on Sable. I'm not going to rant about it here, but I could rant forever about Sable because I think she's garbage. At least for wrestling. Anyway, Mean Gene interviews Harlem Heat about their tag title match coming up, and they take on Sting and Luger. So, the winner faces the Road Warriors, and the winning team, that is. And this idea with Sting and Luger joined the Dungeon of Doom. Sting knew that there was good in Luger, and they had been this unlikely alliance despite Luger being in the Dungeon of Doom. Okay, they're tag team champions. They had celebrated the fact that the Road Warriors had come back, I believe, at the Clash of Champions just a couple weeks prior. And they were all ready and all gung-ho, but Luger's a heel, Sting's a babyface, and could they coexist? Well, they were able to. Luger sells in a really goofy manner, and I will never understand how he was necessarily over once he got back to WCW. Now, there was a time when he was U.S. champion, he was fucking great, but he was just so goofy here. This was pretty good that unfortunately descended into a bit of just blandness, and then the ending it made sense, but it also kind of killed it. Road Warrior Animal ran in and hit Stevie Ray with the lead plate, and then Luger covers 1, 2, 3, and then Luger and Sting just yell afterwards. They just yell in a post-match promo. And then One Man Gang versus Conan for the U.S. title. One Man Gang was far away from being the Jive Soul Bro that he was, bro, if you will. Yeah, I love that theme by Slick. Seriously, Jive Soul Bro, Jive Soul Bro. Can't fucking sing it at all, but now it's wormed its way into my head. So, Dusty at one point talked about, fisting him in the head, and it's like, fist him in the head is what he's doing, says Schiavone. The timing was off and we get a rolling senton 1, 2, 3. This match did not need to be on pay-per-view. Nothing against Conan. And nothing even against One Man Gang, who was still pretty damn good at this point, even though he'd been in wrestling for a number of years. But it was not a good idea. We then get Mean Gene interviewing the Road Warriors, who are going to face Sting and Luger later. And then we get Sullivan with Jimmy Hart versus Brian Pillman. I respect you strap match. I respect you, Booker Man, and Pillman leaves. This is the famous match where Pillman basically had done this loose cannon thing and decided to get out of his contract, a way to convince Bischoff to let him out of his contract and then go to ECW. And then unfortunately had the Humvee accident where it wrecked his ankle and he was never the same again. Even though he cut the promo, he could never wrestle like he did. But yeah, this was pretty ridiculous. Pretty damn ridiculous. And then we get Arn coming down to have a match with Sullivan because they had that uneasy alliance. They have a strap match. Flair comes in after a few minutes to stop this. We need to focus on Savage and Hogan. Woo! Very, very awkward. Very, very fucking awkward. And Pillman was a fucking genius for how he got out of it. Mean Gene interviews the Giant and Jimmy Hart about Hogan. The Giant yells and tries to do rhymes. And they're still pushing this thing of the Giant being the son of Andre the Giant. Thank fuck they dropped that. They never should have done it in the first place. Luger and Sting versus the Road Warriors, WCW Tag Title match, and oh dear, this should have been good, and it wasn't. Luger kept stalling. When he would get in the ring, he would try to play dirty. The Road Warriors would toss him around because where they wanted to throw you, you would fucking go. This is not good. It went on way too long. It was just dragging. They did a melee at the end. It led to a double countout, and the crowd boos. This is where the crowd is really starting to turn on the show. They were really starting to turn on the show by this point. And it would only get worse. Flair yells about facing Savage, says that he will get Liz on his side, and he ends up doing that. The cage gets lowered, and the crowd sort of cheers because they're like, hooray, something's actually happening, something good. Well, Savage took on Flair while Woman was in Flair's corner and Liz was in Savage's corner. I want to say right now Liz got better with age. Just fucking goddamn beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Steel cage match for the WCW title. And they always worked well together. The crowd was getting mad. Flair got bashed into the cage and ground into the cage and he was bleeding. Someone needs to put a cork in Woman, I guarantee you. She's out there screaming, says Dusty. Well, someone did about 10 years later. 11 years later. Whew. Boy. Some of these lines about Woman and about Benoit and, the people involved really have not aged well in hindsight. It's actually rather frightening. Flair gets his tights pulled down. It's Moon over Miami tonight. A line from Heenan, because of course it fucking would be. We get a botched 3 count. Then people thought Savage won, but no, he didn't. And he had the championship. I forgot, actually, after Savage had won the championship of World War III, he lost it at Starrcade 95. I forgot he regained it on a Nitro like about a month later. I think it was the January 22nd edition in 96. I forgot that he regained it. Because sometimes the title got tossed around so damn much, some things are a little fuzzy to me. So Savage actually was the champion here after Flair had beaten him at Starrcade 95. It was just really, really strange. The tights got pulled down again. Look, I love Flair, but we didn't need to fucking have that. Woman botches a powder spot. Liz hands Flair her shoe. And Savage gets bashed in the head with the shoe. 1, 2, 3, and Flair's a new champion. Hogan then comes down to get Flair and Arn. Arn's in the ring to celebrate, and the cage is wobbling a lot. Really wobbly. It's like being held up with tissue paper sized cords, or tissue paper thin cords. And by the way, Hogan has a patch over his eye because he got a shoe into his eye recently. And then we're getting loud Hogan sucks chants. And those unfortunately would continue despite the fact that Hogan was supposed to be a babyface here. The crowd was fucking pissed. Hogan, by the way, is supposed to face the Giant in the main event. He's already out there. You don't need to do the entrance. You can save time. Hogan goes back to cut an interview about how Liz has some explaining to do. References how Liz and Hogan, even though I think there might have been something there, Liz and Savage ended up splitting back in 92. Maybe this has something to do with it. Apparently, Savage just really respected Liz and wanted her to, have money in wrestling, and I can understand that. And that was really good. That was really good to see. Hogan, of course, had to make it all about him, despite the fact Savage was always better than Hogan and always fucking will be. Then he goes back out for the main event. Giant with Jimmy Hart and the Taskmaster Kevin Sullivan versus Hogan. Steel cage match. Hogan sucks. Hogan sucks. Dear God. There were some people cheering, but there were a lot of people in that crowd of 7,200 people booing a lot. They were booing heavily. This was fucking bad. This was worse than their Halloween Havoc 95 match, in my opinion, because you didn't even have any shenanigans really until the post-match stuff. No Yeti, thankfully, even though he was at that point Super Giant Ninja the Yeti, and then sent down to the power plant. Poor Ron Reese was never given a goddamn fair opportunity at all. The crowd boos Hogan, and then both were bleeding at this point, and we get three leg drops. Giant is up on the rope somehow and gets knocked back down, and Hogan escapes to win. Sullivan hits him with a chair. He chases Sullivan into the cage, and then everybody in the Dungeon of Doom just gets in there. Everybody get in here, and they just fucking start doing this stuff, and he fights off everybody with the chair. Hogan does. And then Loch Ness shows up, who really wasn't able to do all that much because he was diminished as far as physically, even though his weight was out of control. And he was a legend in British wrestling, and in Calgary, he had done some good stuff in Calgary, but he was almost 50, and unfortunately his run would be cut short by an unfortunate diagnosis of lymphoma, and he would die just under 3 years after this. He would die in November of 98 at the age of 52. But he shows up, doesn't really do anything, and this is a bad fucking ending. Hogan says, hey, listen, that was it. That was it. That was the end of the show. I'm going to just throw these notes away. This is not good. Anyway, yeah, this is a bad show. This is a bad pay-per-view. You can watch a train wreck here if you want, but the bigger train wreck's Uncensored 96. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.